Hi and welcome to the 64 Doors. Today we're going to open door 18. Here we find the perceiver, and this is an archetype that is all about psychology, discernment, and correction. We're going to explore the perceiver from a human design perspective and a gene key perspective. So right now we have the Sun in Libra in gate 18. We have the Earth in Aries in gate 17, and the design part of the cross is the 58 in Capricorn and the 52 in Cancer. This is what we call the Incarnation Cross, that somebody who's born here in the 6 days that we are in gate 18, he is going to have the personality Sun or the life's work in the 18. And there are 3 different possibilities of activation sequence or incarnation crosses when you're born with the Sun in the 18. The first one is the cross of service, and then we have the cross of correction and the cross of upheaval. So since the cross is not a 90-degree cross but a 88 degrees cross, you can see that the sign part is different. Here we have the 52 and the 58, and in the 2 other crosses, the 39 and the 38. So the cross of service has to do with a correction that leads to making life more joyful, with more vitality, more quality. That's what the 58 and the 52 bring. And then when we look at the 39 and the 38 in the cross, it's also about making things better, but it's more about this provocative energy of the 39 and this kind of the light warrior or the fighter of the 38 that provokes a change and shows how we can make life better, how we can come to a change. If we go back to the Rave Mandala and we look at the standard view, we see that the 18 comes from the splenic center and it points down towards the 58 in the root center. So when we speak about the correction of the 18, it's not a correction that comes from the mind. It's not about that kind of knowing. It's a knowing that has to do with sensing, a knowing that has to do with intuition. And that is very grounded through that 58. The way that we speak about it in the circuitry is that it's a channel of judgment. And as somebody who loves to challenge everything in life, you're recommended to not offer criticism unless asked, because that could lead to resistance. And if we look at the same channel in the integral human design, we see that the lower frequency of this channel has to do with criticism. So it's to give advice almost, or to criticize without being asked. And then upliftment is the gift frequency. It's really to be able to use that capacity for correction to make things better. And the highest frequency is the joy, when the 18 is sensing and the 58 is infusing that vitality. And it's all in the collective circuitry. So it is the stream of service. It's for the better of everyone. And some of the keywords that we were using in the 64 doors, if you go to the copy, it is also higher principles. It is to be idealistic, to be intelligent. The internal motivator is perfection is natural. And the Achilles heel that we see in the archetype is that the standards are very high. So it can be a little bit hard to live up to them. And it can't help but seeing the flaws, and it could get stuck on the details. So if we go from here into more of the gene key spectrum, so again, the way that it works is that it has this lower frequency. So anything can be lived out in a low frequency or in a high frequency. And as humans, we have really access to that whole frequency band. And we also basically learn by contrast. So it's good for us to have that whole access to that whole spectrum. And what we see as well here is that the programming partner, the opposition, is important. And that's the same thing as we could see in the cross before. So the lower frequency here is the judgment and the opinion. So even if we were saying that the 18 doesn't have to do with the mind because it's in the splenic center, when we look at the opposite, we look at the 17 in the body graph comes from the Ajna. So together, the 17 and 18 who are programming partners actually really have to do with our psychology and how we think about things. So judgment and opinion, the low frequency. The higher frequency is about farsightedness and integrity. So it's about knowing, it's about living with higher principles, but not necessarily pushing them on people, but kind of waiting for the right moment to share. And the highest frequencies are those glimpses, that like the creator frequency, that really what we have access to, not all the time, but when we're really in that creation mode, when we're kind of one with everything. So perfection and omniscience. When we speak about codon rings, we're right now in the codon ring of matter, and we have already been in the 46 last week. We're now in the 18, then we will go into the 48 and the 57. So this is when we speak about the golden path and the hologenic profile, we have those 4 gene keys that are actually programming the different spheres that we have in our Venus sequence. So the 46 is programming the SQ, the 57 is programming the core, the 18 is programming the IQ, and the 48 is programming the EQ. So we can see how the essence of each one of these are important in a certain age. The IQ that is programmed by the 18 is the age from 15 to 21, and it has to do with that period of time where we are developing our way of thinking, when we have enough, when our brain is enough developed to be able to kind of think for itself, but it's also very perceptible, like it perceives really what's going on around. And that's also why our culture, our family, what's around is going to condition us and influence us. And that's really what we speak about in the gene keys with this 18. It's also about adults taking responsibility for their childhood and their thinking, and not just like kind of pushing their own problems, their own trauma in a way, or their own cell memories that aren't resolved on their children, but to take responsibility for your own judgment and to pass on the integrity, to be a role model for the generation that's coming. When we look at the astrology, we have Libra. So here it is really about the partner, the peace bringer, the diplomat, the collaboration, the connection. It's a very different energy from where we came from right before. So I can really feel like we have, when it comes to the way that things can be done and healed and integrated in the ring of matter, it's really when we can have this Libra energy and understand the other and see the balance and actually wanting to find that balance. So, and the service is to others here through the pursuit of partnership and peace. In the I Ching, here we have the working on what's been spoiled is mountain over wind. And it says, maintaining a gentle mind and strong back, restraining words until clarity is needed. And you see here, when we look at the geometry, we have wind. These 3 words comes from the frequency band of the 57, which is wind over wind. This is the frequency band of mountain, of the 52, mountain over mountain. And then the 18 is made up of these 2 elementary hexagrams. So judgment is stressful unease, integrity is restrained intuition, and perfection is stillness with clarity. And the dream arc is what I would love you to go and actually look at in Jane Addams' blog, where she's painting all the animals. So for the 18, we have the hopoi, however that's said, the tiger and the flea. And is there anything more? Yeah, we also have the mudra, right? So this is the mudra of perfection. And you can get a whole library and kind of use them as embodiment practice, which is so important to not just keep the gene keys in the mind, but actually starting to embody the transmission. So this is a transit to really tune into your psychology and see where your mind is either your friend or the slave driver. It gives us that opportunity to see how are you using your thoughts on a daily basis. Are they helping you, or are they making you feel like you are not good enough, for example? We have a whole bunch of questions in the 64 doors that you can work with this week. And I wanted to just give you some of them. So would you rather be right than happy? Do you tend to feel superior or inferior to others? Maybe in some relationship you feel like really superior, in some relationships you feel really inferior. So what does that come from? Because you're always the same person. So why the comparison? What about high standards? Do you feel like you have very high standards that create problems in relationships? Or do you have somebody close to you that have high standards that maybe are exhausting you to try to live up to? And the judgment and the self-judgment. Richard Rudd says that all judgments is self-judgment. And what does that really mean? Could be a good week to tune into that. Like every time you judge, bring it back to yourself and see where it comes from. And then, there are patterns, there are beliefs that we have inherited from our parents, and that's a lot. If you go into the 18th gene key, you're going to see that, and you're going to see kind of like when we become an adult after 15 years old, that we are, some of those beliefs, some of those things that were repeated to us as children, they become rigid, and they become our reality, they become our truth. So look at those inherited patterns and see, are there things that you can let go of? Are there things that you can forgive, transcend, that don't serve you anymore, that aren't even yours? So the conditioning of the mind has a lot to do with this transit. And are you able to work well with others? Because when you feel superior and inferior, that also is going to affect your ability to work with others. The teamwork can create interference. And it is about the perfectionism sometimes, that if you are a perfectionist, you're never going to be happy, really. And looking into integrity, what does it mean to you? Do you look at the integrity in the subtle, like kind of when you, on a daily basis, do you look at the small things in your life and feel like, are you in integrity with that? Or is that more in the big things? Like, what is integrity? Like how, when we were speaking with Simone in this soul conversation, it's about a passionate life, a life lived in true integrity and truth. And when I was thinking about integrity, I was more thinking about, are you doing the small things? So what does integrity mean? And for me, it goes from like really the big things to the very small things. So it's a whole span of like really where you can look at. And sometimes I feel like really the details are the trickiest things that actually need a little bit more of attention. And another good question is, how does integrity feel in your body? Because that's especially for me when it comes to the small things, that you can feel the unease in the body. You can feel the inadequacy, like you can feel like something is wrong, basically. And your body's going to tell you. Because when we are centered in alignment, it feels really good. It feels effortless. It feels flow. But when we aren't, it's going to tell. And the codon ring of matter is really so much about that. The body telling us what is off and what is right. So I wish you a really good week in this transit. Thank you.